The Hytale trailer got 60 million views back in 2018, and after 5 years, we just got some of the biggest reveals so far, so I want to update you all on where it's at now and the current state of Hytale in 2024. Because if you haven't been following for the last few months, then you probably don't even realize that we've started getting a lot of official reveals and answers from the team, including word on the adventure mode, combat systems, a bunch of stuff confirmed about modding, and they even spoke about Hytale's future after launch. So as we edge closer towards this long-awaited game, let's start by breaking down a statement by one of the team members who responded to the question, if the whole idea of Hytale is to be built out and expanded by the community, will you as developers be planning to update the game in the future after launch to add new content? An important thing to consider in my opinion, and I think we all deserved a solid answer about this after so long. Game designer Goblin officially responded that while Hytale will feature all sorts of mind-blowing creations they're hoping will be made by the community with their tools, rest assured that there will still be plenty of original adventures, game modes, and surprises from the team themselves. Quote, the story of Orbis, that's where the adventure mode takes place, isn't going to tell itself. Our plan is to develop the ability for you to create your own worlds and your own stories, and then we will also use that ability to create our own worlds and adventures too. Honestly, I think this was masterfully put. Remember, the Hypixel team is bursting with creatives who I imagine want to do all sorts of amazing things outside of the current scope of the game. Like us, they're waiting for the launch of the whole engine to finally build out their own personal worlds beyond even the Orbis that we've come to know and love. This also leads me to believe that the actual adventure mode story will be ongoing. We may get content updates as far as new stories or new big bad bosses to chase down, but I also feel there's a huge potential to take inspiration from games like Fortnite and have the story of adventure mode change and evolve in real time. Think about this, Hytale launches, we play through adventure mode, and maybe we even beat a bunch of the bosses, but a year after the game has released, our actions in that world may have caused a whole new evil to rise up, or potentially a disruptive event could reshape the entire landscape. In the case of an update like that, we may even be able to choose to spawn in the OG adventure mode map that we knew from launch, or load up and generate an entirely new preset, like Orbis Chapter 2 for example, and play through a completely transformed environment, potentially set in a different time, under different narrative circumstances, a different geography, different wildlife, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is the team aren't going anywhere after launch, and for years now they've been hiring positions for continuous delivery. After all, Hytale is looking like it will be a live service, which means they aim to ship content and updates far beyond the initial release of the game. Next, let's shift to combat, where a user asked if there will be any sorts of counters besides blocking, such as parrying or dodging. We've seen quite a lot of varied combat gameplay so far, and the team's senior competitive designer, likely someone who's working on all sorts of PvP minigames for the online component, commented, yes, absolutely. Combat works best when there's a variety of options for the player, with each having its positives and drawbacks. We want players to express themselves by choosing how they engage in combat, and the equipment they bring also plays a role in that. In fact, he says that this is where it gets fun, when players use equipment and different abilities to craft their own personal, unique playstyle. We've seen showcases of different weapons, special attacks, and a number of approaches to combat. We know that as a player, you may even wish to stealth one area and then choose to completely tank another based on the equipment that you're wearing. And it's important to maintain that versatility, that variety across both adventure mode and online play. The team are also very aware that this stuff will be built on even more when it comes to modding, so having this varied foundation is really key for Hytale. And with so much to choose from, it does beg the question of whether the game will come with a more bloated, tedious tutorial of sorts, or will systems all be introduced in a more intuitive way? Well, that was a question from one community member, and Tag, the design director on the team, stated it's a bit of a yes and situation, because they don't just think about tutorials, more so how they welcome players into the whole universe of Hytale, their journey to become an avatar, as we know that the players are referred to as in the game. He says initial onboarding teaches you what it means to be an avatar and how your powers can differ between your own adventure world, the capital, which is Hytale Online, or an experience created by someone else entirely. And whilst fundamental concepts like movement and block manipulation need to be introduced, we shouldn't expect to get bogged down in every single detail right away. There's a whole universe, really there is, It's an entire engine to discover, and you will learn as you begin to feel more at home within it. And let's say we really wanted to stretch our imaginations with what is possible once we have picked up a thing or two. Well, we can now look to the executive producer of Hytale, good friend of the channel John Hendricks, who answered a question about how limited modding will be in the game. This user asked, "It will make or break the game for me if I could play as a yellow pufferfish wielding a mace made out of a shark, flying on a hoverboard with a pet pufferfish following behind." And true to his nature, John did us all one better and laid out some potential incredible possibilities that are 100% doable in the game. Okay, he said, so A, you want to model your character to be a pufferfish with the ability to swim fast, breathe underwater, and expand your size when in combat. B, create a new weapon that inherits all of the abilities of a mace, but with the special ability that spawns an attack shark for a limited time that also grants you partial immunity to being stunned. C, a flying hoverboard with a co-pilot aquarium designed to hold a pet pufferfish in it. And D, an actual pet pufferfish companion who not only grants you a hoverboard speed boost, but also gives you aggro reduction to any hostile creature that sees its smile. Well, John said, yes. As in, yes, all of that is completely possible. Breaking this down, it suggests that we can completely customize our player model and set physical traits, including custom ones. We can create and combine weapon archetypes and apply custom special effects and features that can manipulate our stats. We can create different vehicles, including flying vehicles, which can have multiple seats, and can create our own custom pets that apply specific traits and buffs to help our character in survival and combat scenarios. It also suggests a final level of detail whereby even micro things like a smile or the actual mood of a pet can have an effect on nearby mobs based on something as fine as sight. How long it would take to make something like this is kind of up for debate, but if you're anywhere close to as talented as one of my favorite Hytale YouTubers and animators right now, GOLDERITE, then I think this confirmation will make you pretty happy. You know, there was a lot of initial concern around the modability of the game being limited purely because of the closed system that Hytale would be run on, but this goes a long way to dispelling those concerns. And speaking of dispelling concerns, one user expressed that they are deaf so rely on subtitles for sounds, and that a lot of people may have reading problems or ADHD. They prefer visuals that predict where an explosion may land, or when an enemy is going to attack, as it helps them focus. And so taking the mic for this question was senior UX designer Alex, who stated just how important accessibility is to them. They've implemented features like subtitles for dialogue and captions that you can toggle on and off for non-speech sounds. It's always been high on their priority list, consciously designing the game with all of that in mind. Things like the colors of the UI for anyone that's colorblind, or using multiple sensory methods to deliver essential gameplay info so that we don't have to just rely on audio alone. I find this answer really cool because it does technically confirm systems are in place for voice acting and dialogue, among other things. Could that mean cinematics during the story? Will we get to hear the voices of some of these characters we've been waiting to meet for years? Also, Alex makes a great point. I can't stand when I want to play a game quietly or watch something at the same time, but have to have the game volume up in order to understand everything that's going on or hear enemies approaching. And like, look, I'm not deaf or anything, but it is important to realize that this isn't them saying they've made the game easy for regular players. They've just made it a lot less difficult for those of us that have struggled in the past with games that didn't account for them or their physical conditions. None of this will be forced. I imagine there will be a high level of customization to the accessibility features themselves. Okay, so we're going to assess what all of this does actually mean, but first I received a physical package in the mail from the Hytale team themselves, which I really wanted to show you guys. As you may know, me and a bunch of creator friends run an annual Christmas charity event celebrating the community that we have here, and as thanks, I received a postcard in the mail. For transparency, I have received 2 of these before, but this one was a concept art that came with a number of themed character pins. We have a Quebec, the god of orbits known as Gaia, and the big bad villain of the game, Varen, with a pufferfish thrown in for good luck. And as much as I want to take this moment to thank the team for the sentiment, I again just want to highlight to you all at home that this means a lot for us. Developers don't just do this, but the Hytale team have. It shows they care, and it shows that they aren't just ignoring everyone or planning to stop making the game. They haven't gone silent, they're clearly serious to the point that they have all sorts of merch, figures, statues, pins, and art that we've seen a number of times. But rightfully so, there are a lot of people that are obviously curious about this whole new engine that the team have been working on over the last few years, and recently they revealed that they used Flex as the backbone of this engine. Essentially, Flex is an entity component system, or ECS for short. It's going to allow the game the flexibility to build highly varied gameplay while supporting their vision of empowering creators long after launch. And look, even if this stuff goes completely over your head like it did mine, just know that receiving this level of technical information is a big step up. They're divulging, they're clarifying that this project is so much more than just a game. They have an entire ecosystem planned. This year, they've been more specific than they ever have been before as they work closely to hone that new engine and prep it for a big reveal one of these days. So when can we actually expect that? I mean, we're getting on in the year, right? Well, John, the game director for Hytale, replied to one of the most important questions I think could have been asked. Could it be possible to release the content creation tools for Hytale before the launch of the game so a solid foundation of user-generated content could be built up? With John replying and stating officially that Hytale will be releasing tools ahead of launch, but expect them to go out in rings or waves, first to a small group that will be supported very heavily, then much broader groups. He then expanded on this, saying internal teams and external small group feedback was first, then they moved to external group and user testing. After that, to expanded external groups, then beta, and then launch. Yes, he did just mention beta and confirmed that it's still a thing. In fact, all areas of Hytale will undergo a similar ring testing process. John also said that we'll have a lot more substantial news to talk about in 2024, and all of these reveals do feel like they're building up to that. So I can safely say that I think our estimate of a big blog post dropping around summertime remains accurate. There really is nothing suggesting that the team are delayed or going through any more issues. They are marching forward at full speed at this point. And as much as you guys might not like to hear about this, they did have a big update on their jobs page as they've started looking for a few crucial roles that will matter a lot more when it comes to approaching launch, such as a director of monetization, who I assume will be figuring out all the ways that a content marketplace or user-generated content system could work. We have seen the word marketplace be mentioned alongside terms like creator ecosystem, further suggesting that we will not only be able to create, but sell and generate revenue from our creations. They're also bringing more people on to advance the online gameplay and minigames, including roles for continuous delivery, as mentioned earlier. These people aren't being hired to make the game anymore, they're being hired to update it after launch. And topping all of this off was a listing which suggested the team are finally undergoing serious QA testing, aka quality assurance, with senior analysts for both the core tech and the environments being hired. I mean, come on, things like producers and QA testers are certainly a sign that they're gearing up for significant movement and work. And after the good news earlier this year that Hypixel Studios wouldn't be affected by all of the layoffs taking place at Riot Games, them cutting over 500 jobs, and their willingness to answer questions almost every day on Twitter at this point, tells me that they're really keen to break this silence. They're eager to show us at long last, finally show us what we've been waiting for, and we'll be breaking down everything else that happened in the last few weeks in the next video, or click the one on screen right now to get your helping of Hytale content. Buckle up, because this YouTube nerd who likes a game that isn't out yet a bit too much is back. Stay safe and keep free.